Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Daily Roundup on this, a Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host, shall I? Do you know what, folks? Today is National Crush a Can Day, and my co-host is so delighted that in the 70s, the soda and beer industries switched from steel cans to aluminum cans because now everybody is a tough guy. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. Happy Crush a Can Day to you, Sheila.
Do you know what, David? Oh, am I frozen? No. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't crush it like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just like chug it, crush it, throw it. Like, you missed an incredible opportunity to chug a beer on live TV, crush the can, and throw it away. What a disappointment.
I can't afford the dry cleaning bill, Sheila, but you know, once upon a time, that was the measure of a tough guy. You take a steel can in one hand and you would crush it. And like I said, now everybody's a tough guy thanks to the miracle packaging of aluminum. So there you
go. We should tell everybody what we're doing today because it is a real stuffed sausage of a day today, with all the comings and goings in the House of Commons and everybody having an opinion on what's going on in the House of Commons. So we should get to that. And there's this whole sidebar of the parents' protests and like literally everybody's turning on Justin Trudeau. And I couldn't be happier about it. I'm just sad that it happened so late. But anyways, this is a Rebel News Daily Roundup. It's normally hosted by my friend David Menzies, who joins me today in a rotating cast of characters. Today I am that character, but it's not always me, wherein we talk about the news of the day or yesterday sometimes, completely unscripted, and sometimes as it happens, news sometimes breaks as we're talking about it. And it's a great way for us to interact with each other because I work remotely and I'm not all that frequently in the office. So it's a good time for me to chat with my friend David Menzies, but it also gives us an opportunity to interact directly with you, the viewer at home, and it gives you the opportunity to support your favorite little network that could. So if you are watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, okay, fine. But if you want to watch us on a platform that doesn't care about your politics and lets you interact with us and support us, might I suggest you head on over to Rumble or Odyssey. On Rumble, you can leave something called a Rumble rant. That's their paid chat. Supports us here at Rebel News because we'll never take a penny from that Nazi apologist, Justin Trudeau. And on Odyssey, it's called a hyper chat. If you leave more than the $5 US minimum, we are obligating ourselves to read it on air, but don't make that the bar for participation for you. If it's under that, frequently we read it on air. Sometimes we even read the free chat. So there's your encouragement to leave a paid chat or even just leave a chat. If we think it is a thoughtful chat, funny chat, we just might read it on air for free. So that is how things work around here. I'll throw it back to my friend David Menzies.
Well, you know, Sheila, I love that term, Nazi apologist. Jeez, Mr. Diversity's having a bad year so far. And, you know, I'm looking at the federal polling numbers, Sheila. Conservatives at 42%, that's up 8 points. Liberals at 23%, that's down double digits, 10 points. Forget about the rest. Jagmeet Singh is driving his party right into a flaming dumpster heap. But if you are interested, NDP 18, Green Party 7, and the Bloc Québécois 6. So I'm going to read the tea leaves here, Sheila, and try to envision myself as a crystal ball reader. And
I think the result is this. There is no way in hell we're getting an early fall election. I'm looking more and more at 2025. Right now, the only thing on the Prime Minister's side or the Liberal side is time. And in terms of, and we're talking 2 years, because they can rag the puck until October 2025. And we're not even into October of 2023 yet. And I guess they're counting on Canadians to have very short memories, Sheila. I mean, all these scandals, I mean, you called him a Nazi apologist, blackface, the groping of Mrs. Knight, SNC Lavalin, Chinese electoral interference, 2 disastrous India trips. You know, Sheila, it's almost as though this guy is made of Teflon. I mean, it hurts that the media don't do their job and carry water for this guy, the trained SEALs that they are. But can he survive this one? And by that I mean, can we see kind of a Julius Caesar ending here where his own caucus and cabinet turn on him and simply insist that he resign? Because the way these numbers look right now, this is potentially a Conservative majority government if an election were held today.
From your lips to God's ears, David Menzies. You know, if you look at these polling numbers, it's pretty telling that most of the Liberal support is bleeding directly into the Conservatives. And the NDP, they're down 1%. So what is that, a rounding error? The NDP voters are just entrenched NDP voters. They're not going to, they aren't moving anywhere, but those Liberal voters look like they're moving directly to the Conservative Party of Canada. And boy, doesn't that prove the strategy of the last 2 elections from the Conservative Party completely wrong. You know, they thought to get our hands on some of them, their Liberal voters, we have to be more like the Liberals. And it didn't work. But once they selected a leader who was completely opposite of Justin Trudeau, nerdy, smart, smug, thoughtful, good with numbers, good with middle class Canada, and as Justin Trudeau likes to say, people trying to join the middle class. Once they went away from Liberals in blue ties over to actual Conservatives, there's suddenly becomes a reason to plant your vote with the Conservatives, because there was never a reason to change. You know, if you're offering the same, well, why change? So maybe the Conservatives might learn something here. I'm not convinced. They tend not to learn things. They tried things 2 or 3 times to much failure before they actually do something different. But this is different. And, you know, it's showing in the polls.
Yeah, they jettisoned that loser, Aaron O'Toole, of course. That was one of the true tangible effects of the Freedom Convoy, the end of his political career. And he really was a loser, Sheila. I remember the 2021 election. He had a great first week. Trudeau had a horrible first week. And everybody says, never judge an election campaign on week 1. And then O'Toole had a great second week, and Trudeau had a horrible second week. And it was around that time, you know, into the halfway mark, well, you know what, maybe a carbon tax, maybe a gun grab, maybe these aren't such bad things, with the fantasy hope of wooing Liberals over to the Conservative Party. And we all know what happened. It was an absolute disgrace. I think they'll be teaching that campaign in political science classrooms for decades to come, Sheila, because it was literally snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. We shouldn't be here right now. And you could say a little of that for Andrew Scheer as well. For the most part, Pierre Poilievre, I think, is saying and doing all the right things. There's been, I've counted 3 self-inflicted wounds that he didn't have to commit on himself, but time might take care of that. And say, as we're speaking of Poilievre, why don't we throw to a video where Mr. Poilievre has joined the chorus asking blackface to, personally apologize for lauding a Nazi in the House of Commons? Let's check out his words.
Justin Trudeau was responsible for inviting President Zelensky to the House of Commons to give that speech. He was responsible for making the event a success. He is responsible for the officials at Global Affairs, the intelligence services, the Prime Minister's protocol office, all of whom could have and should have asked for a complete, vetted list of every one of the people who would be in the room and in proximity of a wartime leader. Every single person ought to have been vetted for their diplomatic and security sensitivities if the Prime Minister and his massive apparatus were doing their jobs. The Prime Minister is now responsible for the biggest single diplomatic embarrassment in Canadian history. And what has he done with that responsibility? He's been hiding out at his cottage. For 3 days he's hid there instead of coming to the House of Commons and taking responsibility. There's always someone else to blame when it comes to Justin Trudeau. But here's the reality. Responsibility and power go together. If he wants the power, he has to take the responsibility and come to the floor of the House of Commons today and apologize to Jews, Poles, Ukrainians, and all Canadians. Justin Trudeau, do your job. Stop hiding. Take responsibility and apologize. Thank you very much.
Because arguably the damage has been done. So what will an apology do from the PM?
Prime Minister needs to let the world know that he takes responsibility for this colossal failure that is the result of his personal negligence. He needs to pick up the phone and personally call President Zelensky and apologize to him. He needs to pick up the phone and call Jewish groups, not just in Canada, but around the world, and apologize to them. He needs to reach out to the Polish embassy and apologize to Poles all around the world to let them know that he takes ownership for the massive harm and embarrassment and shame that his negligence has brought upon our country. Thank you very much.
Wow, it sounds to me, Sheila, like Pierre Poilievre is channeling Uncle Ben Parker. You know,
I was
with
going to say, he quoted Spider-Man. He did.
Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility. But you see, when it comes to blackface, he channels an Elton John song, which is sorry seems to be the hardest word. And, Sheila, if he is coerced into an apology, I am betting the house it's going to be one of those fake, half-baked apologies where he has pronoun problems, you know, using the pronoun we instead of I, that we have learned a great lesson, we have to do better. No. Use I. I apologize. I have to do better. Everything Pierre Poilievre said in that clip is correct, Sheila. Yesterday, Andrew Scheer, who used to be the Speaker of the House, so he knows all about the protocols and the rules and the legislation, was, citing chapter and verse that there's no way you can have somebody come into the House of Commons like a hunka without him being vetted. There's just no way. And so there is a lot that is not being told here. And it's on the Prime Minister to apologize, but he just can't say those words, can he, Sheila? Even in this case.
He can't say those words when it's something that he did wrong, right? Rose Knight, she experienced it differently. He's so sorry that she experienced it differently, not so sorry that his hands ended up on her butt. He's familiar with apologizing for things that would give him great glory in apologizing for, particularly when there are things that he is not responsible or that Canada didn't do. But he can't apologize for his own bad behavior. And I think he might have a caucus revolt on his hands. And, even Liberal voters are bleeding from the party. But I think, and I don't think that his MPs are breaking ways with him. I think it is absolutely self-preservation. These people want their pensions, And Justin Trudeau, right now, if you're a Liberal MP on your first term, he's a threat to you having your pension, because his buffoonishness is going to hang around your neck like a millstone.
No, and Sheila, I'm glad you mentioned Rose Knight when he made that pseudo apology. Again, he was using the pronoun we. We know this. We know we've learned something.
I didn't grope
but wait
her.
a minute. I'm a heterosexual guy. I've never groped any woman in my life. Well, what do I have to say sorry for? You did that, not me, and not millions of other Canadian males who are gentlemen. And same with blackface. You know, we have to do better. I've never put blackface on my face. Like, why are you throwing in everyone that's on good behavior as part of the we club? And look at the chronology. This fiasco occurred on Friday. By Sunday, that's when the chatter started, with great effect of Ezra tweeting about the chronology and about how things weren't kind of adding up. And on Monday, blackface takes a personal day off, or what, the surf was up in Tofino. And then yesterday, he buggered out of Ottawa to Toronto. He went to the Toronto Congress Centre to give some speech to auto parts manufacturers. You know, it's kind of funny, Sheila. Efren and I, we went out there. He was greeted by several protesters with some very nice signs. I put nice in quotation marks. We cut into the audio feed of what he was saying to the auto parts makers, and again, diversity. He's still playing the diversity card. What does diversity have to do with auto parts manufacturing? I mean, I'm taking it for granted if I went to a Ford or a GM or a Chrysler or a Honda or a Toyota or a Lexus plant, all of which are making cars in Ontario, and I've been to these plants before. They're very diverse. No one talks about it. That ship has sailed, Sheila, but he's somehow got to get the diversity element into making cars, and I think we have a clip of, I don't know if we're going to run the audio, but just to show you some of the signage that was greeting Trudeau at the Toronto Congress Centre. WEF and Trudeau must go. Totally agree with that. As you can see, high security. And he was in that building blathering on about diversity. You know, the thing is, blackface, you really are committed to diversity, aren't you? Because in the House of Commons, you invited a Nazi war veteran. It doesn't get more diverse than that in a perverse sort of way. I love that flag. Look at that, Sheila. 2 of the images, of which there are many, because even blackface himself has forgotten how many times he's donned that makeup. But God bless those soldiers out there, reminding this Prime Minister that he's not getting away with these shenanigans.
You know what, though? They think this is over because Rhoda is no longer the speaker. And they think this is over because they're trying to ride it out through a long weekend that's coming up, or maybe it's the weekend after. I forget, Truth and Reconciliation Day is coming up, or Tofino Surfing Day, or whatever it is for the federal government. But I think they're trying to just rag the puck to get there, and hopefully this sort of fizzles out. But I don't think it's fizzling out. So Rhoda's resigned. He's taken the blame. And if I understand the health minister correctly, also somehow Putin is to blame. So let's roll that video. Yo, Putin, there's nothing that guy can't do. Let's watch this.
Great consequence in your own words. Does that not require a government response, an official apology within the House of Commons on behalf of the government for the mistake that Speaker Rhoda made? So, will you make that case?
Well, I understand, as all of us, I stood and applauded. I stood in my place and applauded. And for that, I am deeply sorry, personally. I feel betrayed myself that I was put into a situation and I stood and applauded something that was contrary to my values. But it seems to me that we're all extremely zealous about continuing to pursue this, when what we need to be zealous about, and I can see you shaking your head no, and I would ask you, because I'm sure you and I are aligned in the cause of democracy. I'm sure you and I are aligned in standing against autocracy. And if we're going to battle against and we're going to spend all of our time and energy fighting on somebody who has stepped down, who is an honorable gentleman.
The question was not about the speaker. The question is about an apology.
Right.
Will the government apologize?
So as you're yelling at me,
I'm not yelling. I'm just trying to.
as you're yelling at me, okay, about what you feel the government should or shouldn't do, I'm trying to say to you that I believe the focus of this government, the focus of all parliamentarians, should be standing united. Because what is Putin doing with this? He's lying, he's manipulating, he's trying to turn an earnest mistake into something else.
Put it behind us though, and so you can move on to what you want to talk about?
I think that the situation was totally unacceptable. And that I'm not sure what folks are after here. I mean, in the question. Let me be very clear. I said it. So let me say this, because I can only speak for me. I am the person that's in front of you right now. I deeply apologize personally. I stood and I applauded somebody who was completely contrary to my values. That made me feel disgusting. Okay, I felt awful and terrible after.
Then resign.
I apologize to anybody who suffered. I apologize to the Jewish community. I apologize to anybody who fought against the darkness that is. I can say to them that the core of my values is that I stand full square with them, and I would lay down my life in that cause. So I personally apologize, and I am deeply sorry. And every parliamentarian I talked to who stood and applauded that day, I know feels that way.
So why is that?
Oh, really? Then why aren't we hearing apologies from every parliamentarian on the Liberal side, including the big boss man, blackface himself, Sheila?
When you lose the media as a Liberal, you've got a big problem on your hands. Did you hear the cacophony of outrage when he said, I don't know what you want from me? I don't understand what you want, he said. She told you. Are you going to go make the case that the Prime Minister should stand up in the House of Commons and apologize for this?
Yeah, that's the mainstream media.
He's like, I don't know what you want from me.
Unbelievable. And the look in his eyes at getting tough, valid questions, Sheila. You know, it reminds me, I think it was back in the early 60s, there's this famous Ed Sullivan Show clip. It had a lion tamer on, and the lion tamer is losing control of the lions on live TV, and they take the camera off the act that is going south. And that was the look he had, much like that lion tamer, like, hey, come on, cats, you're supposed to sit on stools and jump through flaming hoops. Don't you know your role? We pay you, after all. So it was really quite something. But to the point about Putin, right? Yes, Putin is using this. As we discussed back on Monday, Sheila, Putin has used the excuse of, and this is his word, denazification of Ukraine. This idea that there's Nazis galore in Ukraine, which is a huge stretch, let me tell you. But guess what? Thanks to inviting a Nazi, an SS Nazi, no less, into the House of Commons, Putin, all he has to do is say, see, told you, look. I mean, they're even in Canada. How many do you think there are in Ukraine? We gave Putin a multi-billion-dollar propaganda gift.
Imagine the humiliation of being trotted out to stand in front of the media to say, guys, lay off. Putin is using my idiocy as a propaganda win. Like, that's what he stood there and said. Guys, stop. Because the more you make fun of me for how dumb I am, the more powerful Putin gets in his messaging.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, wow indeed, Sheila. And
let's actually, before we move ahead to this last thing, this article that we just published this morning, let's go to the best, and I say this because I'm from Alberta, but I'm sure a fan of Scott Moe lately, the best premier in the country being asked about the Nazi scandal, Danielle Smith.
Yes. Oh, we need a sec to cue that up.
Okay.
But in the meantime, Sheila, as Olivia's queuing that up, what we have to be wary of is basically Trudeau spending his way out of this to get support. As we speak, I understand Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow is in Ottawa, and Trudeau is seeing that even in the Liberal hotbed of Toronto, the tide is turning against the Liberals. What do you want to bet? He's going to cut some multi-million or billion-dollar check for transit, for refugee accommodation, what have you. You mentioned on the 30th, it's Reconciliation Day. He'll probably, you mark my words, meet with some native band and again cut some multi-million or billion-dollar check, hopefully for something good and tangible, like, clean drinking water, for example.
Housing, water, yeah.
This is his strategy, Sheila. He's going to try to spend his way out of this.
Or I think also virtue signal, overreact with legislation. So he's going to say, look how bad the Nazi problem is in Canada. They even tricked me, the smartest man in the country, into celebrating one of them. And so now we need this internet task force to go and hunt down crypto Nazis, by which he means everybody who disagrees with him. He doesn't mean like real Nazis living in comfort in suburban Ontario. He means people that disagree with him. I'm worried that he's going to try to virtue signal his way out of this by introducing anti-Nazi legislation, which is just censorship legislation against everybody else.
Sheila, on that point, we must make note of Karina Gould yesterday with her cockamamie idea, which is even worse than censorship. And you're saying, what could be worse than censorship? How about reversing the record, cleansing the record? She wanted Hansard to be expunged. What happened on Friday was kind of like that, I think it was season 9 of Dallas back in the 80s. It never happened. Bobby Ewing didn't die. He's just having a shower. So the entire season didn't happen. She wanted Hansard to be like an Etch-a-Sketch. You can just tilt it a couple of times and all the sordid mess disappears. Can you believe that, Sheila Gunn-Reid?
You want me to believe that the government that is currently trying to control what you can see and say and read on the internet tried to do an Orwellian mulligan on the official record in the House of Commons? David, well, I never. That seems so outlandish. Of course they would try to do that. I mean, it's not because they're trying to erase the honor given to this Nazi. They're trying to erase their role in the honor given to the Nazi. That's what's going on here.
Unbelievable. But I do think we have the aforementioned Danielle Smith clip. So let's hear what Premier Smith has to say about this fiasco on steroids.
Well, I have Jewish staff members who were off on Yom Kippur, which is one of the most holy days in the Jewish calendar, and I can't tell you the hurt that has caused to members of the Jewish community that this occurred. It's humiliating for Canada. It's embarrassing, and I'm glad that the speaker's apologized and he's resigned for the mistake he made. It was extremely inappropriate. I think everyone recognizes that, and I'm watching it with interest to see if the Prime Minister will also apologize today.
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't stop at Jews being outraged over this, Sheila. Poles, the SS, for the most part.
Sorry to interrupt you, but this is a heavily Polish part of the world.
Yeah.
By the way, very Polish, very Ukrainian, and so it's not just the Jewish community, but so many Albertans are touched by this issue. And humiliating, embarrassing, revolting, actually.
And also Canadian veterans and veterans of our allied nations during the Second World War who were, going over to Europe to kill people like Hunka, not honor them in Parliament. I think of my dearly departed grandfather. He spent more than 5 years of his life in the Second World War, enlisted, had a full head of red hair, came back, his hair was snow white, never talked about the war. I can only imagine the horrors he saw. But to sacrifice that much of his life, to put his life literally on the line, and then to see some scumbag SS German Nazi be lauded in the House of Commons, I can't even imagine, Sheila, what he would say.
We don't even have to go back that far to see Justin Trudeau's disrespect of veterans. This is a prime minister who told a war-wounded Canadian veteran in Edmonton that he was asking for more than the government could give. And then the government gave a Nazi a round of applause in the House of Commons. This is a government that, through Veterans Affairs, offers medical assistance in dying to our veterans because their medical or psychological crises at the time are just too inconvenient for the angel of death Veterans Affairs caseworker on the other end of the line. But they honored a Nazi veteran. This is a government that told a wounded veteran in a wheelchair, a Paralympian, that perhaps she should consider medical assistance in dying when all she needed was a stair lift in her house. So, there are a lot of apologies to go around, but when you preface how Justin Trudeau has treated our current veterans versus how he treated this Nazi SS war criminal, I think it speaks to where his mind is at.
You're bang on, Sheila, and you forgot one notable thing in that chronology. I think that disgraceful remark to the Edmonton veteran, that was back in 2017, if I do recall.
Rock Blazchuk. Let's remember his name, not Yaroslav Hunka's.
Or how about another name we'd like to forget but can't, and that is our homegrown Al-Qaeda terrorist who in 2016, because there's such a rush in the Trudeau mandate. He only got elected in October of 2015, but by 2016, not even a year into his mandate, $10.5 million check cut to Omar Khadr, a terrorist, a murderer, somebody that, killed a U.S. service officer and partially blinded another, and he gets 8 figures for hurt feelings. I mean, Trudeau really knows who to pick when it comes to hanging out with people, eh, Sheila?
Joshua Boyle.
Another one?
Jaspal Atwal. The list goes on and on and on and on, how Justin Trudeau has sympathy for the devil, just loves being on the wrong side of history every step of the way. We should get to this article that we just published this morning by our freelancer, Andy Lee, before we hit an ad break, because for those people at home who don't know, and I don't know how you possibly couldn't, Chrystia Freeland's grandpa was a Ukrainian propagandist for the Nazis. He was a newspaper publisher, and he allowed his newspaper to be completely colonized and co-opted by the Nazi war machine to publish propaganda. So we know that her grandpa was maybe not a Nazi, but at least a Nazi sympathizer, for sure, whitewashing the crimes of the Nazis. Well, let's bump ahead a little bit, because Chrystia Freeland's uncle by marriage, Miroslav Shkandry, defended Ukrainian Nazi volunteers to the Waffen-SS as freedom fighters against Russian Bolshevism. It's in a book that he wrote. It's a footnote about the Waffen-SS division and its legacy, noted that statements against Freeland in a military magazine, Esprit de Corps, accused Freeland of defending World War II Waffen-SS in Galicia. He said that those comments against her were malicious and defamatory intent. But this article is impeccably researched by Andy. She dug through the archives in Manitoba. If you keep going.
Andy Lee dug through the archives, not CBC, not the Toronto Star. Unbelievable.
Okay. So if you go through this, so she dug through the University of Manitoba archives on the Shkandry lineage, and it listed Miroslav Shkandry as being born in 1950, fathered by Boris Shkandry in England after he was released from a prisoner of war camp in Italy in 1949. Now that is not that was a prisoner administered by the Allies 4 people from the other side who fought for the Nazis. So her uncle by marriage, sounds like his dad was a Nazi. And then, so anyways, it goes on, and it goes through how her uncle by marriage, his dad volunteered for the SS and was sent to officer training before he joined the force in Slovakia in late 1944. So likely well aware of what was happening around Europe at the time.
That's right. If you're fighting in Europe prior to May 8th, 1945, we really have to know what side you were fighting on. We found out that from Hanka. Hey, Sheila, is it too early to refer to Freeland as Fraulein Freeland?
That's how Ezra's been calling her all week. And,
this is shameful. I shouldn't be laughing, but, believe me, folks, inside I'm crying. It just gets darker and darker. But you know what, Sheila? We're past the halfway mark. We have to take an ad break. And when we get back, we have some other news to report on. So keep it here, folks.
Dr. James Lindsay, who is a frequent guest of both Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, and the host of the New Discourse podcast, is coming to Alberta for the first time.
And so the conclusion was that we now have to train men the way that we train dogs, with like leashes and shock collars and things, in order to get rape culture to go away.
Hermetic religion is actually the easiest way to kind of make sense, honestly, of the trans phenomenon as well.
Well, the queer theory thinks that there are certain people who get to set the norms of society.
Dr. Lindsay will be speaking directly to the dangers of critical theory and its gender ideology that are pushing their way into children's classrooms.
In queer theory, calling somebody saying you're a man or a woman is called a violence of categorization.
Why don't you say this is systemic sexism and distinguish from what most people think of as sexism? She said, no, it is sexism. It's the same thing. But they're clearly not the same thing.
You don't want to miss this. Tickets are selling fast. You can get yours today. That is being run by Take Back Alberta, so you can get those tickets on their website. October 2nd and October 3rd are the dates, and it's going to be an incredible event.
Hey, Ben Shapiro here. This November, the Wilberforce Project is bringing me to Canada. If you want to fight the woke machine destroying families, join me in Calgary for my talk, hosted by the Wilberforce Project. Go to benshapirolive.ca for info and tickets.
Lots of good stuff happening in Alberta
coming
up
sure.
very soon.
By the way, Sheila, are you going to any of those events in Alberta? The Shapiro event or Taking Back Alberta?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the Shapiro event, and I'll go to the James Lindsay event in Edmonton when it's there. And then I've got some other things that I need to attend in between. So it's very busy. Good for these groups bringing these big names into our bustling little province.
It's fantastic. And by the way, we were talking about veterans, and there is it's a tenuous link, but look at this. Education Minister Stephen Lecce, a.k.a. Claude Rains, the Invisible Man. There's a staffer in his office, Sheila, who's being charged with defrauding the Vaughan Legion. These allegations haven't been proven in court, but if this is the case, wow, that's pretty low, isn't it? Defrauding a Legion outlet? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, he says he didn't know about any of the charges pending against her until she was charged. Like, he didn't know there was an investigation. I take him at his word, but I would be maybe opening up the constituency's books now too, because these people, I don't know. She obviously had access to a lot in his office. So, you know what, I hope for the sake of the donors to the Progressive Conservative Association in his riding that isn't the case. But not great to defraud the Legion, that's for sure.
Well, certainly Lecce has been unofficially defrauding the taxpayers of Ontario when it comes to education matters. His kind of philosophy, Sheila, is, goodness knows anything goes. It's funny how this so-called Conservative government back in 2018, the first election in which they got elected with a majority, were running, one of the planks was against the McGuinty-Wynne sexualized sex ed curriculum. It's way worse today in 2023 than it was then. And all the fiascos, school boards having parents ousted under threat of arrest, libraries at schools, elementary schools containing pornographic materials, our good old friend Busty Lemieux getting away with murder, to the point where at one point for months he was being paid to stay at home and get a full salary and benefits because Lecce, for some reason, he just couldn't even implement a dress code, for goodness sakes. This is one of the worst ministers in Ontario's history. He literally runs away from parents when they try to confront him with the sexualization. So, I'm not shedding a tear for this guy. As I said, he's missing in action. He is the opposite of a leader. And I've heard rumors, Sheila, I hope these are falsehoods, that he might be thinking of running as a federal Conservative. My advice to Pierre Poilievre, stay away from this guy like he's a rabid skunk. He is the opposite of a Conservative. You don't need Lecce on Team Poilievre. He is going to cost you votes, not get you votes.
Yeah, let's hope that somebody organizes a nomination challenge to him if that's the case. I wanted to ask you, I know it's not on the board, but I have an ongoing friendly dispute with one of my oldest, bestest friends on the face of the earth, Mike. My friend who communicates with me nearly exclusively in wrestling videos.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you know Mike. Okay. So Mike says that Busty Lemieux was just trolling. It was a gag from the beginning, and you and I have been had. And I reject that wholeheartedly because I think it's a fetish. And no one's putting up with the fetish anymore, so that's why he's not doing it. I think if he were truly, truly trans, that he would say, no, this is, if I can't teach as my true self, then I will not teach at all. But no, he's going to school now, dressed as a male. I think it was a fetish where he saw how far he could get away with it, and it no longer worked out for him anymore. I don't think it was a troll on society, because what's the payoff, right? Like, he's hiding. He's trying to go back to obscurity. If he were a troll that trolled us all, he would be like, ah ha ha, I got you all. He's not doing that. He's just trying to go back to his obscure life.
Sheila, every time we do a Busty Lemieux story, we get dozens and dozens of comments on the comment section. And it's, oh, Rebel News, how can you be so stupid? He's on our side. He's trolling the woke school boards.
He's not.
I'm going to be very clear. I've said this before. For all those who believe he's trolling, show me the proof. There are three things that are potentially happening. One we can throw in the paper shredder right away, and that is a man transitioning into a woman. If he was legitimately trans, you want to blend in with the other sex. You don't want to be a grotesque caricature. I think for a trans person, the best compliment would be if a man is pretending to be a woman, other people in the room think that's a legitimate biological woman. But we see by the props, clearly that's not the case. So it's one of two things. One, he's trolling the board. The second is, as you said, this is a fetish. Probably autogenophilia, getting aroused, a man getting aroused by wearing the props of a woman, the fake boobs, the high heel shoes, etc. I am leaning on the side of this being a sexual perversion, Sheila, and I will tell you why. As I've said so many times, before this story broke last September, that's September of 2022, we had evidence sent to us by a woman whose young daughter was in a private dance recital in Burlington. This is before 2022. And it was Busty Lemieux in full drag regalia. He snuck in at the intermission mark to watch 8 to 12-year-old girls dance. Now, as you can imagine, when the curtain comes up, and he's right in the first row. I mean, I couldn't get her on camera, Sheila, but more importantly, I got the photo.
I know where this is going.
And he's right in the front row, folks. And as you can imagine, the mothers at this recital, because he stands out like a proverbial sore thumb, are saying, who's that person? And they went down to the front row after the dance number ended, and they said, do you have a child here? And he said, no. And they said, well, you have to leave. And he left. But what was even more disturbing, according to my source, is that when they went down there, and I'm going to try to use the most polite words imaginable, remember, he's watching girls the age of 8 to 12 dance, and it appeared that he was in a state of physical arousal. Now, you tell me that is somebody punking or trolling the system. No, this is one sick weirdo in my humble assessment. And that's what I say to all you people that give us heat. Oh, you're dumb. Don't you understand what he's doing? How do you explain that one?
Settle down. It's a friendly dispute with me and Mike. We're not mad at each other. We just disagree on this one thing. Yeah, like he wears bike shorts, so it's obvious to see when he is enjoying what's before him, to use just the most polite language to explain a very disgusting man. But yeah, I think he's an absolute pervert weirdo. I think
oh God.
By saying he's trolling, it actually excuses just how disgusting it is what he's doing to other people's kids. Like, he's making the kids are also part of the fetish, right?
Yep.
That these kids are forced to be unwitting participants in his sexual perversions thanks to the board who are enabling him. And
actually,
now I think he can't get away with it anymore.
Sheila, boards plural. And that's another mystery. I tried to unravel it, but I can't get anywhere because everybody hides behind privacy and confidentiality, even though this might be a sexual pervert on the taxpayer payroll. But he was with the Halton District School Board. And I've been banned for life from going there, folks, because when I showed up...
You have, but the pervert hasn't. That you have because you showed up dressed like the pervert, doing not perverty things, but the pervert could still go to the board meetings.
Oh, Sheila, when it comes to the educrats, they're all down with the radical transgender revolution, even though this isn't a trans person at all. As long as it's in front of the kids, when you go to their inner sanctum at a school board meeting, oh, this is false and offensive, and I get a trespass letter. But here's what I don't understand. This story, as you know, for months received the attention of the world press, much like Hunkagate right now in the House of Commons. And this guy made the school board and poor Oakville Trafalgar High School, which is a good school, I understand, the laughing stock of the world. So how was it, Sheila, that he is no longer at Oakville Trafalgar, he's no longer with the Halton District School Board, he's with the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, and at Francis Nora Henderson Secondary School? What would motivate the trustees, what would motivate the principal of Henderson Secondary to say, oh yeah, we want that. We want to be under the world spotlight. We want to be mocked and made fun of. And lo and behold, Sheila, he shows up earlier this month for the first day of school boob free. But wait a minute. He said in his only on-the-record interview back in February with the New York Post, he can't take off those Z-cup prop breasts because, you see, he's got a rare medical condition, folks, like 1 in 8 billion, where at the age of 38, he started to develop these humongous Z-cups. They are actual real-life mammary glands. So he can't do anything about it. Sheila, to me, and this is the question I put to the school board, is that this freak was essentially lying about a disability. That, to me, I'm not a labor lawyer, but methinks that is dismissal with cause. But they're still protecting this guy. They are so terrified of coming across as transphobic, even though, as we've said 3 times, he's not trans. They won't do anything. and they protect this guy. Look at him. That's his new look. Mr. Lemieux, as I asked you back in April, where are your breasts? I mean, did you have breast reduction surgery? Or maybe these are props, because what are the odds, Sheila, that the boobs I bought at eBay for $500 or $250 a boob are the exact same size and density that he has with this rarefied medical condition? Give me a break.
You know, I never should have asked, because you just went on a 10-minute rant. And we have a lot of other things to talk about. But
I know, sorry.
I thought I would address that because not only do I hear it from my beloved friend Mike, but I hear it from other people in the email section where they're like, you guys, he's just trolling. And look at now that he's gone back to being just a regularly dressed weirdo and not a cartoonishly dressed weirdo, that it was just obviously a trolling effort. But usually with trolling, there's a payoff where you can actually take a victory lap around the people you fooled, right? Like that's what I do on the internet. But there's none of that happening here.
But Sheila, one little quick epilogue there, since he's gone back to being a man, or someone who identifies as being a man, who knows what the real accurate language is these days. We were also sent photos of him on a certain dating site. And guess what, folks? He's not a man seeking a woman. He is in full Busty Lemieux regalia. This time it's
just a lesbian.
Pardon me?
Is he a lesbian? Is he pretending to be a lesbian now?
Yeah.
Is that what, yeah. Nothing changes but the pronouns.
We should set him up with Ash Davis, that gender bender grifter with the Fergus Highlanders. He's pretending to be a lesbian. There's two biological males that could really have fun with each other, pretending to be lesbians, but they're actually biological men with
If those
penises.
two meet... If those two meet, it'll create a black hole and the entire Earth will get sucked into the center of it. Let's move ahead, because we've got a story on the issue of I'll be happy if we spend the last year dealing with Busty Lemieux. If that person again gets sucked into a black hole, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But on the issue of weirdos in the classroom, and Justin and people breaking ranks with Justin Trudeau, although I don't think he ever really had these people as loyalists to himself. He just thought he did. The Muslim Association of Canada has rebuked Justin Trudeau over parents' rights. I wrote this up yesterday for the website. They said, "We demand that every child deserves a coercion-free education environment where they are not forced to engage in activities contrary to their faith." So this isn't just about Muslim kids. Their demands, they're about all kids, including my own. They said this was in regard to the 1 million March for Children demonstrations. They issued a statement in support of those demonstrations before that. They said, "We recognize the intended purpose of community members to hold these protests is to maintain the rights of parents to be actively involved in their children's education and for children to uphold their religious beliefs." Now, they came out the other day and said, "We call on politicians and school boards, beginning with Justin Trudeau, to retract their deeply inflammatory and divisive comments and issue an apology to the thousands of Canadian parents hurt by these comments." So they are tired of politicians and these woke corporations, for some reason, municipal governments, school boards, coming out and saying that if you oppose the likes of Busty Lemieux waggling his wiener in bike shorts in front of your kid, that you're somehow a transphobe. They've had it, and I'm so excited, because good luck calling these people intolerant.
Well, blackface is not going to bend to this, Sheila Gunn Reid, and I'm so happy this is becoming a wedge issue, because there are a lot of Muslims that vote Liberal, and I don't think that's going to be the case whether it's next year or the year after when we have our federal election. But don't expect the left to listen to that narrative, because it's actually quite the opposite, folks. Sheila, as you know, tonight I'm going to Kitchener. I'm going to the Waterloo Region Council, because they're going to vote on a motion where it's going to be illegal. They're going to have a bylaw that you cannot hurt the feelings with any kind of slogan, any kind of sign when it comes to the Spirit Unicorn Syndicate. So yeah, only them. They're special. They're the sacred cows of society. So in other words, Sheila, if this bylaw was in effect in Waterloo Region last week when we had the 1 million March for Children, that would be deemed an illegal gathering. You would be trespassed and you would be fined up to $250 for just having a sign saying, oh, I don't know, hands off our kids, or I am against Soji, anything along those lines. So we're going to see if that motion passes, but we see similar censorious legislation in Edmonton, Calgary, London, and this is a growing trend with these Marxist bureaucrats and councillors, Sheila, shutting down the debate by law and by financial penalty. This, and by the way, there is no hope in hell. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, much like I'm not a labor lawyer. This cannot win in a court of law. This will be deemed unconstitutional under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which protects this kind of demonstration.
You know what I say to these people? Let's rumble.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's rumble. In Calgary, we're helping Pastor Derek Reimer, who has received tickets for and incarceration for protesting drag queen story hours at the public library. So not only do you have a right to protest what's happening in a free country, but you also have the right to oppose your government, which is what he's doing, because these are happening in municipal facilities. So this is a government decision, and he gets to oppose his government in the public square. And nothing can get more public than a government facility. It's something owned by everybody and administered by the government, and yet he's in trouble for it. So, if they want to bring this in and they want to start ticketing protesters, let's rumble. Let's see how this turns out for everybody.
And Sheila, it's so outrageous. I mean, where does this end? I mean, right now it's all this protection for members of the Rainbow Mafia. But what next? You can't protest against Hindus. You can't protest against Muslims. Well, they'll never have a bylaw saying you can't protest against Christians. But you see what I'm saying? How far along are we going to go cherry picking what groups are sacred cows where seldom is heard a discouraging word? And if you're not all down with that, you're going to be trespassing, given a fine. It's outrageous.
Yeah, and we saw this actually play out in real time. So when churches reopened here in Alberta, Pastor Art's church was picketed by busybodies who don't go there. A church in the Vine was picketed by a couple of weirdos in the ditch across, whatever. And you know what? Church in the Vine didn't call for them to be arrested. They didn't call it a hate crime. They didn't call anything. They just said, look, this is their right. As long as they're not on our property, we don't really care all that much. We're probably just going to pray for them. Likewise with Pastor Art. We saw this with Pastor Hildebrandt's church also. These people have no problem seeing Christian churches picketed. Now, the Christian churches don't actually have all that much of a problem with it either.
Yeah.
It's just this one select group that is, protected from any and all criticism in a free society, which makes it not all that free at all, does it?
It doesn't. And you know what, folks? What I love about Sheila Gunn Reid is her two most oft-repeated words in the calendar year of 2023 thus far has been weirdos and wieners. And by wieners, she's not talking hot dogs, okay? It comes up on almost every morning meeting, and it just puts a smile on my face.
Do you know what? There has to quit being stories about people waving their wieners around, and I'll quit saying it in the morning meetings. But it just comes out of my mouth every day. Sequined underpants, helicoptering their wieners. These are phrases that I shouldn't say in a staff meeting, but society makes me say them. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, before we get into too much trouble, it's almost the end of the show. Do we have some super chats there, Sheila?
You know what? We got to clear up one thing that's left on the list because it's in the YouTube headline, and that is Danielle Smith. We've got a video of her and her health minister they're asked if they're getting the COVID shot because we don't apparently believe in medical privacy anymore if you are from the mainstream media. See, that's my problem with all of this madness is it's nobody's business, especially the government's, but also the media. But here's the media asking Premier Smith if she's going to get a COVID shot.
The federal immunization panel has recommended that folks get their COVID booster this fall. Just curious if we have a sense of when that's going to be available here in Alberta, and if the province is going to be launching any kind of campaign to encourage people to do that. And I guess personally, if you yourself are planning to get the shot.
I'll let Minister LaGrange tell you. I think we're just preparing the final details on the press release on that.
Before that, would you be getting the shot?
Look, I'm a healthy person. I tend to take care of my immune system, and I believe this is something I should talk about with my doctor, not media.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. And yes, we just received information from the federal government in terms of when we will be seeing those vaccines available to the province. So we're working through the process. As always, Albertans do have access for flu, influenza, RSV, etc., all of the various vaccines that are available. So once we have that information, we'll get it out as soon as possible. As part of the normal course of business, typically vaccines are available the end of September, beginning of October, so we anticipate that information coming very shortly.
And just the same question to you, Minister LaGrange. Do you plan to get the shot?
It depends which shot you're talking about. Like I'm looking. I'm very healthy as well. I have a very healthy immune system, and you know what? I also believe that this is a personal decision for individuals to make. I will look at that as time progresses and what my journey is. But again, this is a personal decision. People have to make it for themselves, for their children, and we respect the decisions that people make.
Sheila, how about this for an answer? None of your damn business.
Well, you know what? That's
who
what they
is
said
that journalistic
diplomatically.
jabroni that's asking those questions?
Yeah, I want to see his medical records. Like, I want to know, like, what have you been up to at the doctor? What sort of STDs have you been exposed to? Like, it's none of his business. Now, the Premier and the Health Minister, LaGrange, they answered very diplomatically, but they are right. This is not a question for the media. That was a question that you may have been able to get away with asking under the last guy.
Yes.
But this is the government that believes in medical privacy. And frankly, I think it was outrageous and gross that journalist asked that question. It's none of their damn business.
Oh, okay then, Sheila, we have to cut over to Trudeau making a statement in real time. Let's see what Blackface has to say.
Okay.
Was solely responsible for the invitation and recognition of this man and has wholly accepted that responsibility and stepped down. This was a mistake that has deeply embarrassed Parliament and Canada. All of us who were in this House on Friday regret deeply having stood and clapped, even though we did so unaware of the context. It was a horrendous violation of the memory of the millions of people who died in the Holocaust, and it was deeply, deeply painful for Jewish people. It also hurt Polish people, Roma people, 2S LGBTQI+ people, disabled people, racialized people, and the many millions who were targeted by the Nazi genocide. Every year, there are fewer and fewer Holocaust survivors to share firsthand the horrors of what they experienced, and it is therefore incumbent upon us all to ensure that no one ever forgets what happened. I also want to reiterate how deeply sorry Canada is for the situation this put President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation in. It is extremely troubling to think that this egregious error is being politicized by Russia and its supporters to provide false propaganda about what Ukraine is fighting for. Friday's joint session was about what Canada stands for, about our steadfast support of Ukraine's fight against Putin's brutality, lies, and violence, It was a moment to celebrate and acknowledge the sacrifices of Ukrainians as they fight for their democracy, their freedom, their language and culture, and for peace. This is the side Canada was on in World War II, and this is the side we are on today. Dans quelques instants, je prendrai la parole en chambre.
Okay.
Well, Sheila, it goes to what we said earlier, pronoun problems. He said how deeply sorry Canada is. Again, we, not I. And we regret deeply. Again, the S word is not there. Once again, as Elton John once sang, sorry seems to be the hardest word when it comes to blackface. Even at this stage, he is not giving a mea culpa apology, and he is not leveling, I believe, with the truth that everybody at an event like that, in which you have the Prime Minister and the leaders of the opposition in the House and a visiting head of state who is unarguably the #1 assassination target in the world today. You're telling me that not even the janitor was screened that day? No, not buying it. They were trying to pull a fast one, I think, and they got caught. And now that it's blown up in his face like one of those prank cigars, he is still trying to absolve himself of any blame. What a narcissist.
You know, this comes down to Justin Trudeau and his government so hating the Russians that they lost sight of the fact that the Russians were our allies at one point. And they so hate the Russians that they seem to hate the Russians more than they hate the Nazis. And that's why that guy got a round of applause. And they just didn't realize that not everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels that the Russians right now are worse than the Nazi genocidaires, worse than the Waffen SS. I think they get in a bubble and they forget those things. And I think he truly thinks that way. And again, he's still blaming the speaker directly, that he was solely responsible. He didn't smuggle him into the House of Commons under his robes. He did not smuggle that tiny little Nazi genocidaire in under his cloaks. He was screened completely. They know who he was. And he got in there, and then everybody stood up and gave him a round of applause because he fought the Russians. That's why he got, that's like, cut the crap. Like, it's just garbage. Everybody knows better at this point, and they just think that they can gaslight us into believing their lies.
And again, I'll give this anecdote. What blackface fails to understand is that the public is very forgiving. If you stand up there and give a sincere apology, and I always throw back, Sheila, to the tainted Tylenol scandal in the early 80s in the Chicago area where people were being killed by tampered Tylenol. They were taking cyanide. And Johnson & Johnson, the parent company, came out and against the lawyer's advice, which was to shut up and don't say anything, they said, we sincerely apologize, even though really Johnson & Johnson was victimized itself. It wasn't, this wasn't happening at the factory level. And I'll never forget, I think it was a CNN reporter saying the culprit is still at large, and that remains the fact today, folks. But one thing is for certain, Tylenol as a brand name is dead. Well, in 2023, Sheila, Tylenol has a bigger share of the painkiller category than it did in the early 1980s. And why is that? Because Johnson & Johnson gave a sincere apology. They recalled billions of Tylenol tablets the world over, even though this was only confined to the Chicago area. And they were the leaders in tamper-proof packaging, which is now the de rigueur way products are sold. That's why they have succeeded as opposed to Tylenol becoming a dead brand name. But blackface is a narcissist, Sheila. It's never, ever his fault. And that's why we got that half-baked statement yet again.
Yeah, he's sorry that Speaker Rhoda did this to him. and embarrassed him. That's what I got out of that statement. But
yeah, you're right.
he just blathered on, but really that's what he said. He's so sorry that he was victimized by Speaker Rhoda, and now he's so embarrassed. And now look at the win that Russia got because he's such an idiot.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's value in an apology. Just ask Danielle Smith.
Yeah.
She's the premier now. And she said sorry and then went on a 6-year-long apology tour. And she knew to go away when she had made a mistake. And people will forgive. We forgave her right into the premier's office after she crossed the floor to the PCs and played a major role in delivering us to the hideous NDP. But a sincere apology and acts of contrition. Canadians are understanding people.
Yep.
If we believe that you're sincere, I just don't believe he is, and he hasn't actually apologized for anything yet.
Yep. Canada is sorry, and this is another phrase he said. This has hurt what Canada stands for. Sheila, in the last 8 years, what the hell does Canada stand for? I can't even sing the national anthem anymore. They've changed the lyrics so many times. I trail off after the second verse. So what does Justin Trudeau's Canada stand for in 2023? It looks like being a bunch of censorious thugs to me. That's what Canada stands for.
I do love how he stuck the LGBT acronym in there just for good measure, just so that he could be that guy. Let's get to these chats because we're over time and I have a meeting to be in very shortly. We've got $5 from Kane Enmark, who refers to David and me as a power couple.
Well, if things had been different a few decades ago, who's to say?
We're like Scary Sherry and Macho Man, aren't we? I'm going to do my makeup like that on Halloween. So you're going to have to come in with your Macho Man costume and your glasses, and we're going to look great.
Well, last Halloween, we were supposed to all come in costume, and only myself and one other person showed up, and I was mankind. So I'm going to in the spirit of the 3 R's, Sheila Gunn Reid, I'm going to recycle my mankind costume.
I dress like mankind every day. It's not even a costume. It's just how I like to look, right down to the hair. Although one of my kids said that I had Russell Brand hair, and I'm very mad at her right now. Let's keep going. Annalisa, 1964, gives us $10. My 2 favorite people. Looking mighty. Oh God, Annalisa, why? She says, looking mighty yummy today, sweet Menzies. Sheila, you're beautiful as usual.
Please, I scare easy.
Me too. She just gets a kick out of making me say stuff like that. Thank you, Annalisa. Very kind. We've got World's Worst Gamer gives us $1 and says, "Hunk of burning love. The government loves Nazis." Well, if you take their round of applause as proof, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, really, that hunka is really playing into all kinds of headlines in terms of a hunka mess in Parliament Hill right now.
Yes. And then we've got one from Nana Awake, $10. Since this terrorist won't apologize, I think she means Justin Trudeau, the Conservatives need to strike while the iron is hot and vote no confidence, push the rest to do the right thing. Okay. We need a civics lesson. Because people always say, well, why don't they just vote no confidence? You need a confidence motion or a confidence issue to vote against the government, and then the government falls and goes to election. So usually those are budget issues. Sometimes there are other things that they turn into a matter of confidence. But if it is not, if it's not that, and that's not before the House and the majority of the House doesn't vote against the government on an issue, then it's not a confidence motion and we can't go to election. That's just how it is.
But Sheila, on this issue, because it's not going away, despite that Millie Mouse statement Blackface made, is this big enough to engineer change, and certainly the man that has the trump card, as always, is Jagmeet Singh. He could pull his support for this government, but of course, I know I'm dreaming in Technicolor. He's got to rag the puck until 2025, so he gets his full parliamentary pension. Or is this going to be just another, case of Teflon blackface? Nothing sticks to him, and he'll just, march along like one of the bushwhackers to the next egregious scandal.
Into the Royal Rumble and right out the other side. You know what? That's the thing. Unless Jagmeet Singh actually does something that parties in opposition do, and that's oppose, nothing's going to happen here. We've got 2 more years left of these kooks, unless he breaks ranks. But I don't think he will, because he's getting everything that he wants. And my concern is the Liberals know they need Jagmeet Singh's support to continue on. And so what are they going to do? Give Jagmeet Singh every crazy little thing that he wants. And we're going to see the Liberals, I think, become more radical and more left-wing just in an attempt to maintain that NDP coalition, because the polls show that it's going to be a conservative blowout against the Liberals in the next election. And so they need to delay. And the best way to delay is to spend in favor of the NDP.
Well, Sheila, I have the utmost confidence in blackface creating another scandal in the months ahead. So I'm sorry.
What is it? It's like, it's not even, it's just afternoon here in Alberta. So we could even see another scandal by the end of the day.
Absolutely. By the way, speaking of which, I lost the office pool. I guessed Rhoda would be gone by 5. It turned out it was just before 2 p.m. So as Maxwell Smart used to say, missed it by that much.
I didn't even get in on the pool, guys.
Okay.
Anyways, I think we're all caught up.
All right.
I think that was the last one. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you so much to our super producers, Olivia and Efron, and thank you to the folks tuning in. We appreciate your support, especially those who gave us a monetary donation. We love that. And of course, a big thank you to my beloved co-host, Sheila Gunn-Reid. We'll be back here tomorrow. And in the meantime, as always, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
Canadians are grappling with news blackouts on social media due to the Justin Trudeau Liberal government's Bill C-18. This new piece of legislation demands that social media platforms pay the government for news shared by users, which is an inconceivable task for companies like Meta and Google. So, as a result, they have decided to preemptively block all Canadian news content, including ours at Rebel News. In response to this, we have since teamed up with VPN provider Private Internet Access to ensure that you can continue to access all of our content across a broad range of platforms, while also maintaining your privacy. For only $2 a month, you can bypass Trudeau's new censorship laws while you safeguard freedom of speech and continue to get the news that matters to you the most. Visit piavpn.com/rebelnews to take advantage of the 84% discount and 4 months free. As a bonus, PIA has all of its servers located